Writing advice out there just isn't that great, am I right? If it was, you'd probably be too busy writing rather than watching this video. Also, storytelling is somewhat subjective. The audience is not homogeneous, they want different things, which is a fact a lot of writing resources don't really address. That's when I realized I had to take matters into my own hands, and after several years of research and dedication, I finally present to you a system I'm calling the Narrative Compass. So you know how on the packaging of things like wine or coffee, you can sometimes get these diagrams that are supposed to indicate what the products taste like? Well, I figured out how to do something similar with films, categorizing all narrative information into 8 fundamental types of immersion, and then deriving a set of metrics from a film's unique distribution of information. Satisfaction metrics are concerned with subjective preferences for different information types, while competence metrics treat all information types equally but judge based on the composition of the information distribution. My system is a bit of a steep learning curve, but bear with me because besides helping you write, I believe this system will help you find films you really enjoy, learn about yourself in comparison to others as it pertains to taste in film, allow you to analyze narratives so you can make the most out of them, and just generally enrich your understanding of how fiction affects us. The system is akin to music theory, but for fiction, and I promise you, it will change the way you see storytelling. Also, did I mention that this system can predict a film's IMDb score? In case you needed any more convincing that I know what I'm talking about. All these metrics are entered into a specific formula, 2 different formulas depending on a film's age, and it will return the film's IMDb score to a fairly high degree of accuracy. But before I can get into how this is done, I'll need to properly explain what all the metrics actually measure within the film. I have already briefly described each information type and each metric in my first video on this channel. It's not a prerequisite, but definitely check it out later. This first more in-depth video will delve into the metric of richness and introduce the 3 of the 8 information types associated with creating intensity in the moment and discuss their specific criteria. Richness is a measurement of the average immersive density of a film. The basic premise is that the more dense a film's scenes are in immersive information, the richer the narrative. Any given scene in a film will contain anywhere between 0 to all 8 types of information, and whatever number that is will be the density level of that scene. Although negative information is also possible, we'll get to that topic another time. We assess all scenes in a film and assign a density level to each one, and then based on that data, calculate the average immersive density for the whole film, from which we can derive the richness score. But we'll get into the mathematical specifics another time. Let's begin our demonstration of how to determine the immersive density level of a scene. We will use the scene from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, where Puss first confronts the personification of death. It starts about 12 minutes into the film and lasts just under 4 minutes. And because it starts early in the film, it doesn't need much context, which is great for our demonstration. I will describe everything that happens in the scene and transcribe the dialogue. Then we will go through the list of criteria for each information type and determine which criteria does the scene meet, from which we can determine its level of immersive density. In each video on richness, we will look at the criteria for just 3 information types at a time. I will be making 4 videos for each information category that can be watched in any order, even by people new to this channel. Returning viewers can just skip anything they are already familiar with. You can also look up the film clip that is the subject of our discussion here on YouTube and skip my reiteration. Before I begin to describe what happens in the scene, a little bit of context for people who might not be familiar with the film. In the first 12 minutes, we learn that Puss is a hero to some and a criminal to others. He's quite brazen and fearless since he has 9 lives. However, he realizes that he burned through his lives quicker than he initially thought and has already died 8 times before, which means his next death will be his final. The doctor implores him to retire from his life of adventure and suggests going to a cat retreat where he can be taken care of, which Puss promptly dismisses. So in this scene, Puss orders a glass of cream from a bar, and the bartender hands him the drink. "I am Puss in Boots. I am no one's lap cat," Puss proclaims in indignation. He takes a lick of the cream. "The doctor is a quack and a crazy man. He should have stick to cutting hair." "Last call, Signor Boots," the bartender calls out. "Another glass of cream. Make it your heaviest," Puss replies. "I keep the heavy stuff in the back," says the bartender and walks out of sight. Puss sits there for a moment. The candle blows out, he doesn't notice. "Retire. You're too good-looking to retire," he says to himself. He hears a tune being whistled. As he turns around, he sees a large hooded figure sitting next to him. "Well, well, if it isn't Puss in Boots himself," says the wolf, in the flesh. Puss in Boots acknowledges his presence. There's the famous hat, the feather, and of course the boots. "My compliments to your cobbler," the wolf continues. "Thanks. Good to meet you too," Puss says awkwardly and moves away from the wolf. "I never do this, but can I get your autograph? I've been following you for a long time," says Wolf as he shows Puss a wanted poster with his image on it. "Sign right there." He taps at the word dead. Puss in Boots laughs at the face of Death Bounty Hunter, says Puss. The wolf removes his hood. "So I've heard." Puss stands on the table and readies his hand near his sword. "You will find your reward does not come easily. This I tell you." "Everyone thinks they'll be the one to defeat me," Wolf replies, leaning over the bar to get another drink. "But no one escaped me yet. All right, let's get it over with." Puss grabs his sword. "Fear me, if you dare." Before he can finish his sentence, his sword is driven out of his hand and into the barrel behind them. The wolf just takes a sip. Puss walks over to his sword, grabs it, and says, "Okay, no more messing around." He runs at the wolf and takes a few swings. The wolf dodges them all while still sipping. Slow, sloppy, sad. The wolf catches his sword between his sickles and pushes Puss off the table. Then Puss makes his attack by swinging off the chandelier, but Wolf just catches him by the throat and says, "You're not living up to your legend, Gato," and throws him across the room. Puss is unable to defend himself and Wolf gets a cut in. Puss sees the blood on his paw and is paralyzed by fear. The wolf smells the air. "I just love the smell of fear," he says in a drawn-out and intimidating way. He slowly approaches Puss with his sickle scraping across the floor. Puss sees his lives flash before his eyes. "What's the matter? Lives flashing before your eyes?" Wolf asks. He kicks the sword towards Puss. "Pick it up." He says it again. Puss runs for his life, hides in the bathroom, and closes the door behind him. Wolf whistles as he approaches. His shadow looms over Puss. He searches for a place to escape. When Wolf enters, Puss is nowhere to be seen. He has escaped through the sewer. This concludes the scene. Now let's go through the criteria for the top 3 information types that are categorized as explicit vicarious. We will start from the top left and go clockwise. In the top left corner of the compass, we have the information type called achievement. Achievement is categorized as explicit and external. It is the information type responsible for representing the external dimension of a character's agency or, where appropriate, the lack thereof. Achievement is defined by the external consequences of actions or choices, whether these are desired or not. The criteria for fulfilling achievement information are: Criteria 1. The scene contains zero-sum or win-lose scenarios by means of adversarial combat, competition, or disagreement, on the condition that the goal of such conflict is clear or some advantage has been gained or lost. Criteria 2. The escalation or de-escalation of tension in a scene that either results in some form of change to the progression of events or the prevention of such. Criteria 3. A sense of suspense from the possibility of escalation or things going wrong, even if the source of unease might not be entirely clear. The immersive purpose of achievement is to believably demonstrate how a character's actions or choices determine the outcome of events, or conversely let the outcome of events be believably determined no matter the choices or actions of the character. The term believability is somewhat subjective. However, the standard I use is to ask if the narrative could have still gone somewhere if the important character failed at their intended action in a scene. Believability is determined by the possibility of failure, and if that failure could still be compelling or thrilling to either character or plot progression. Is the action dynamic, and does it create change? The appeal of achievement-dominant narratives is to expand a character's external agency, effectiveness, and competence over time, and the believability of both experienced and potential failure will make that final achievement feel real and earned. Fulfilling the immersive purpose of achievement will provide one of two ways the agency role of fiction can be fulfilled. There are 4 narrative roles that encompass the 4 reasons to engage with a fictional narrative, which are vicariously experienced agency, intricate connectivity, edge-of-your-seat anticipation, and the revelation of meaning. I've already talked a little bit about narrative roles in my first video on this channel, but we will look at them in even more depth when I cover the satisfaction metrics. Does this scene contain achievement information? Yes, it does. The scene shows a fight between 2 characters that ends in a definitive defeat for one of them. Our scene fulfills criteria 1, a win-lose scenario with a clear goal. Death wants to ultimately take Puss's life, and even though Puss isn't killed here, he is definitely defeated and humiliated in that fight, creating dynamic action which shows a change in circumstances. Criteria 2. The escalation of tension is also fulfilled. Death is not an immediate threat from the start, but the escalation builds up to that being the case. To make things clear, a scene only needs to qualify for one criteria to fulfill the requirement of an information type. There are no extra points for fulfilling more than one criteria or anything like that. The criteria are just there to provide specific examples of how the immersive purpose of an information type can be achieved, but we are ultimately judging a scene on whether it fulfills that purpose or not. This means that in the future I might add additional criteria to the lists if I come across examples and stories that I judge to fulfill an immersive purpose, but don't have a criteria that describes it well. The scene now qualifies for at least one level of immersive density. Let's keep going and see if it can qualify for more. Next is the rhythm information type. Rhythm is categorized as explicit and neutral. The immersive purpose of rhythm is to give a scene an immediate, in-the-moment vicariousness achieved through repetition or incremental actions, creating an anticipation in the audience for the resolution of that sequence. This provides one of the 2 ways to fulfill the anticipation role of fiction. Here is the list of criteria that can fulfill the immersive purpose of rhythm information. Criteria 1. A character avoids a sequence of clearly defined hazards or obstacles. Criteria 2. The scene establishes a clear perception or measurement of a hazard's proximity. Criteria 3. An action is completed through steps, repetition, or increments, where these steps either push the progress forward or failures push the progress back. Criteria 4. Musical, dance, or sports performances which are required to achieve or complete something. Does our scene contain rhythm information? Yes, it does. The scene fulfills criteria 3. The confrontation is experienced in several distinct steps. First, it's unclear what the wolf's intentions are. Then it is revealed that he's a bounty hunter, which leads to step 2. In step 2, the wolf has not yet visibly drawn his weapons or left the bar and is very relaxed in his demeanor. And when the wolf finally draws his weapons and starts to fight actively, that's when the scene enters step 3. When Puss realizes he's outmatched and leaves the fight, that's when the scene enters step 4. For a scene to fulfill rhythm, we need 3 or more steps. 2 steps is not enough. It will be processed as a contrast or a dynamic, a before and after, but not a rhythm. Rhythm information will usually appear in the context of action and adventure when dealing with either adversarial or environmental hazards. The appeal of rhythm-dominant narrative experiences is to be immersed in that heightened state of immediate anticipatory awareness, but it can happen in the context of either external or internal reality. There are more character-focused ways to use rhythm information, and one example can be found in the song Let It Go from Frozen. Here, the incremental use of rhythm is used to show Elsa getting in touch with her abilities again after she has been suppressing them for all those years. Her creations get incrementally more intricate. First, she creates a snowman, then she creates a stairway, then she creates her ice palace, and then finally she transforms her appearance, completing the sequence of transformation. Musical numbers such as Let It Go are more suited for rhythm information to appear in them because of music's innate rhythmic nature and emotional heightedness. However, a musical number does not automatically qualify for rhythm information unless it can fulfill its immersive purpose. In the attempt to create scenes of grand spectacle, what will ultimately determine if that spectacle is engaging or not is whether that scene can fulfill the immersive purpose of rhythm, among other types of immersive information. Another good example of rhythm that is character-oriented and is not a musical number is the Potion Seller comedic skit you can find on YouTube. Here, the repeated denial of the knight's request to buy the potion seller's strongest potions incrementally culminates in the knight's emotional breakdown.
Potion seller, what do I have to tell you to get your potions? Why won't you trust me with your strongest potions, Potion seller? I need them if I'm to be successful in the battle. I can't give you my strongest potions because my strongest potions are only for the strongest beings and you are of the weakest.
I love this example because it demonstrates how immersive engagement can be created with very little resources if you know what you're doing. It is the immersive substance that makes fiction entertaining rather than any form of surface-level spectacle alone. All that being said, our scene now qualifies for 2 levels of immersive density. Let's move on to our last information type for this video. Influence is categorized as explicit and personal. It is the information type responsible for representing the personal, emotional dimension of a character's agency. Influence is the second type of way the agency role of fiction can be fulfilled, where achievement information is related to the consequential side of agency. Influence information is related to the responsive side. It can be thought of as characterization relating to the future, such as future-oriented ambitions, anxieties, vulnerabilities, and expression of concern, will, principle, or desire. A character can't always affect their circumstances, however, they can exercise their agency in the way they respond, what they believe, and how they influence others. Where achievement information creates ruthless antagonists, influence information can create manipulative ones. The immersive purpose of influence information is to evoke the audience's vicarious experience of a character's feelings through conflicts and hardships related to something of personal significance to that character. The appeal of influence-dominant narratives is to progress a character's principled or emotional response to their situation, or conversely, progress their situation by means of principled or emotional influence. The criteria for fulfilling the requirements of influence information are as follows. Criteria 1. A character actively tries to achieve a desired goal of personal or principled significance. Criteria 2. A character actively tries to prevent something they fear of personal or principled significance. Criteria 3. A character urges another character to think, do something, or act in a particular way, in either an inspiring, manipulative, or disparaging way. Criteria 4. A character justifies their actions or lack of actions due to their principles. Criteria 5. A character experiences a significant emotion of personal or principled significance associated with failure or success. Does our scene contain influence information? Yes, it does. It fulfills criteria 1 and 3 from Wolf's perspective. He has been waiting a long time for this confrontation, making it of personal significance. If you look closely, you will see that Wolf has the countdown of Puss's 9 lives etched on his sickle. He doesn't just want to take his last life, He also wants to intimidate and humiliate Puss, take him down a notch. He urges Puss to keep fighting, knowing Puss is outmatched, to drive that point. The scene fulfills criteria 2 and 5 from Puss's perspective. This is the first time he experienced fear of such magnitude. His failure causes his life to flash before his eyes. The images he sees are of a personal nature rather than of his achievements. Our scene now qualifies for at least 3 levels of immersive density. It now contains the complete range of explicit information types: achievement, rhythm, and influence. Explicit information types create intensity in the moment. Achievement provides the external consequences. Rhythm draws out the anticipation through several increments. And influence gives a personal, emotional impact to the scene. The scene now also fulfills 2 out of the 2 ways of fulfilling the agency role, using both achievement and influence information types, and 1 out of 2 ways of fulfilling the anticipation role, using rhythm information. In the next video, we will look at the 3 information types related to characterization, which are influence, relationship, and reflection. During the videos focused on the richness metric, we are only concerned whether or not a scene contains any given information type. But next we will cover the impact metric, which is concerned with the order the information types are prioritized in each scene. Certain configurations are more conducive to the creation of conflict and stakes than other configurations, which is something we will get into in due course. I hope you found this insightful, but feel free to ask me any questions in the meantime.